Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to a Monday early evening edition of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, episode 75, where we talk all things flying in midlife. My name is Ben. I'm a pilot here in the Atlanta metro area, commercial rating, and hopefully was supposed to be a tailwheel rating student, but that had to be delayed. I fly a Cessna 182, we like to call the Beast. Joining us tonight with things ablaze, but in beautiful Nashville, Tennessee, home of the Bachelorette Super Charlie, flying a beautiful Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hey, Brian.
How's it going, Ben and everyone? I'm glad to be here. Glad to be back. I missed my first episode ever in the whole run of the podcast. And it was nice to sort of sit on the sidelines and watch you guys hold it down. You did a good job.
Thank you very much. You know, when you decide to install an indoor pool, that may cause these type things. So Also joining us from Portlandia, our friend and sport pilot extraordinaire, flying a flight design CTLS we like to call the Egg. It's Ted. How you doing, Ted?
Hey, I'm doing well. The Egg is out of annual. I had a nice heart-to-heart talk with my mechanic, and I'll continue using them. And I have the Egg back. So
nice.
Life's good.
New fancy prop on there too.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, we broadcast live on YouTube, typically on Tuesday nights, but the next couple of weeks are going to be a little bit discombobulated, and just stay tuned. We'll be announcing when the next show will be. But typically it's on Tuesday at 8 p.m. We have a very active group of folks in the live chat who contribute to the show, which we very much appreciate. The audio podcast is available wherever you get your fine podcasts are found, iTunes, Spotify, Overcast, whatever you use. We would really, really love it if you leave a 5-star review. Haven't gotten one in a while. So please just take a few minutes to let us know what you think. And we, again, appreciate a 5-star. Feedback and suggestions are available via email or voicemail, midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, or you could just go to our website at midlifepilotpodcast.com. We've got a great show tonight. And I rewatched this video from my friend Brian Siskin, where comparison is the thief of joy. And I put a lot of time into thinking about this topic, and I'm anxious to hear from my co-host about it, but I'm looking forward to the discussion. I guess we should recognize our new Patreon members. Do one of you guys want to grab that, or you'd like me to do it?
Yeah, I'll pick that up. Yeah. So as you all know, we have a Patreon, and Patreon gets you better access to things, including Discord, and it supports the podcast, which really helps us out. We've got a couple new people. This week we've got Chris C at the Hershey Bar level. To be clear, that's another Chris C. Thank you, New York Chris C as well. At the Landomatic level, we have Larry K and we have Ryan. And I want to thank you for supporting the podcast. It's really appreciated.
Yes, thank you.
And you can also do a one-time PayPal drop via our website. If you'd like to do that, we'll certainly recognize you.
Yeah.
So why don't we kind of launch right into our topic, unless there's something else in the housekeeping world that I left out. Brian, did I leave anything out?
Well, I just feel like we need to take a second.
Yeah.
You know, just take a breath.
Yeah.
And just think about all of the crazy things that have been going on. We've had several people in our community, Midlife Pilot Podcast community on Discord, which we're not going to get into their we're not going to name names or anything like that, but it seems like a lot of things have been going kind of sideways. And we've also had northern lights here. We've had electromagnetic storms. I feel like that, I don't want to get into astrology or any other things, but, it feels like there's just this collective skittish kind of energy or something going on. At the same time, everybody's fine. Everything's working out fine and nothing's been tragic. Everything is solvable or workable, but it does just seem like a lot of people have been going through it. And so I just wanted to take pause for a second. Can we just, spiritually, is there sage or something we can do in here to kind of clear the mojo and start fresh here?
I don't know how well this will translate over to our audio listeners. However, closing our eyes and maybe chanting Om a few times, I'm not sure if that will help. But, sometimes the universe throws us all curveballs, and it does seem like there's a confluence of curveballs being thrown throughout the community. So, we're all going to walk away from it better and stronger and maybe a little smarter from it. So the good Lord doesn't give us anything that we can't handle, as I like to say. I just wish he didn't trust us so much.
I just wish that Jesus didn't hate my house.
Maybe he said, Brian needs new flooring.
Again.
Yeah.
Again. I don't like this one, the way it's going. So we're going to get new ones put in. But it does. I kind of did. All of us have our struggles throughout our different parts of our lives. Mine is really, and I was telling Ted earlier today, I'm a complainer internally. I don't really verbalize it that much, but I kind of complain to myself when I don't have enough to do. And I complain when every minute of my day's planned, which is for the next 8 days, literally. I am on a very strict schedule, and it gives me a little agita, to be honest with you. So that pales into comparison with what other people are going through, and I don't mean to dilute that in any way. But no, you're right. I did notice that there's just some crazy stuff going on right now.
Yes, everybody just needs to, take a deep breath and carry on. I did get to do some flying the other day, and I did one of those flights where I don't know what exactly I'm doing, but I'm going flying. And if you look at my track log looks like an emergency aircraft, spatial disorientation. I'm just all over the place. I did probably the most pure flying around to go look at this and go look at that and go hit a couple of airports I've not been to before, and just really freewheeling, following some boats. And I don't know, it was probably the least thought about flight that I've done in a long time. And it was so fun that I realized I'd been doing this recreational gas burning thing for about 2 hours, and I was like,
oh, nice. Yeah.
I should probably go back. But it was really, really therapeutic in the wake of all the things that have been going on here. And it's a fine line, right? Like you don't want to, you want to pass the I'm safe checklist, right? Like you don't want to feel like you're wrung out or spun out from life circumstances or whatever. It's a very fine line between that and I just need to go get in the air, and I will be better for it. So it was definitely one of those I'll be better for it situations.
It's awesome to go up by yourself because there are zero expectations.
Yeah.
And if you want to go fly at 8,000 feet or 2,000 feet, and if you decide to make a right turn here, practice a steep turn, just whatever you feel like doing, you don't have to worry about anybody else in the airplane. And I think that's very therapeutic.
Well, and you're also, you're kind of balancing the stress that you've got, and you're not doing a flight that's like overly challenging, right? There's risk, of course, but it's not like, hey, I'm going to go fly to Texas in the dark through Bravos, right? It's like, I'm just going to go out and fly around in an area that I know, in a plane that I know. So you're decreasing the risk in those ways. And yeah, I think it's great.
So yeah. So Ben, have you been able to get up at all?
Negative. AJ and I were going to go up and try to maybe practice a little formation flying, but on Saturday afternoon, he and I volunteered to sit at the booth. There was an air show. They call it, it's ironic, at PDK, they call it Good Neighbor Day, and they have an air show. So what do they do for the neighbors? They bring in some really loud warbirds and fly over it a bunch, which I found ironic. But Angel Flight, the office is based at PDK, and they have a couple of booths. And so we were there trying to recruit some pilots for them. And it just kind of went further into the afternoon than we had time for. So that was kind of my only window. I do have a wedding in Panama City next weekend, this coming weekend. And the brother-in-law has the plane on the calendar. I'm hoping that he may scrub it for some bad weather on his departure day, which would free me up to have it. So, Stuart, if you're listening, could really use an airplane this weekend, but that's okay. So, no, to answer your question, that was a long answer. I was supposed to be training today for a tailwheel.
No, today would have been your first lesson?
Yes. And they emailed me and said they're needed to replace a part and they hadn't gotten the part yet. And I had let them know that the forecast didn't look that good, which it is terrible out there. So they're kind of off the hook, and it would have been fine either way. But yeah, they've been very cool about it. So
did you study and prep and everything?
I did not. I was actually going to study last night just to look at the Bearcat. That's the airplane, and just find out whatever information I could about it. I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to study. So I was just going to try to learn about the airplane.
Well, again, if you guys haven't listened back, go check our episode with tailwheel instructor Ben Lehman. It's a few episodes back. And his website, flywithben.com, is a really great website. It has, he's culled together sort of the best of print material and videos and things. So if you want to understand the fundamentals before you start your training or in the middle of it, he's got a great resource set up. So, Ben, if you ever decide to do some studying, go to his website.
Maybe I'll do that. You're comparing my experience to your experience, aren't you? My tailwheel experience.
This is it's the most aggressive segue that I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the Segway podcast to teach you how to do better segues. And I guess subliminally it just kind of came out. So I do apologize for that. Comparing your journey to others. That's what we're really talking about here tonight. And
yeah,
it's funny to me. I'll start it off if that's okay with you guys. Our aviation journey, and I've got 3 boys, as most people have said before. It feels like I am also growing up in aviation, and I hear people making comparisons all the time. And when I was 100 hours into being a pilot, or 50 hours being into a pilot, and as I was quote unquote growing up, like my kids are growing up, there's a lack of maturity. I think that you're so overwhelmed by all the input that's coming at you that it's easy, very easy to say, wow, that guy soloed in 20 hours. It took me 40 hours and get wrapped up into that. But as I have grown in aviation and as I have matured in aviation, I think it's its own path as to what your kids do when they're growing up, what you did when you were growing up. It's interesting now for me to hear to people talk about, I soloed in this many hours, or some people brag that it took them a long time to solo because it was hard and, good for them that they got through it, or they took them a long time to get their rating for their private pilot. And, it's just fun. I don't want to say fun. It's interesting. It's an interesting observation to watch how people approach these different things.
Well, I really like that we're talking about this. Obviously, I've maybe done some video pieces around this, but I really was fascinated by the idea of, if we just kind of step back, where does this tendency for comparison even come from? And really starting there. And, I was doing a little research, trying to figure that out. And I came across just the idea that hamsters can categorize things and compare things. And I just thought, wow, this is really common. I think the essence of this is really common in nature, right? And that it's actually, I think, something in our brains that's there as a survival mechanism. It's something there that we need to use in a constructive way. But as we become, I don't know, whatever we are now, right? Like a bunch of toddlers running around with cell phones and, being angry that your smoothie isn't right, or whatever culture has become now, we have all this extra time. We're not hunting and gathering. And so we have all this extra time to sweat these things and overthink these things and utilize those comparison instincts in ways that are imposed perhaps on arenas of our lives that are not necessarily benefiting from that type of thinking, when it comes to comparing yourself to others. And also, just as a baseline, I just want to say really what I think we're getting at here in this topic is what you touched on, Ben, in terms of just how long it took you to reach particular milestones, or even further afterward, what planes are we flying, or what trips are we doing, or what ratings are we getting, and all these things. And I'm happy that we're talking about this and that everybody can participate in this conversation, because I feel like that it's almost like almost like a hazardous attitude that hasn't been identified and put into ACS.
And I think as we mature as pilots, it's still okay to compare. And sometimes it's not an outright, I'm comparing myself to someone else. When I first started out, somebody just may be making the comment, oh, I'm going for my solo. And somebody else asks, how many hours do you have? And then I read it and I'm thinking just to myself, well, gosh, I'm at 50 hours. What am I doing wrong? And it's a hazardous attitude. Like, you start putting more and more pressure on yourself. And as I've gotten older, Lord knows I'm not the oldest pilot by any stretch of the means, but I've kind of taken the Brian Siskin approach to a lot of things where, let's just stop and enjoy the ride, or slow down and enjoy the ride. And this came up with AJ and I, because he's doing tail wheel at a different place. And he'd like to knock it out in a weekend. And given his spot in life where he's got 3 young kids and he's got a job that demands a lot of his time and he's got responsibilities. I'm older. I don't have, my kids are grown. I want to just take a lesson a week and just knock it out as long as it takes. And he needs to knock it out quickly. There's nothing wrong with either way.
So we know you're not a responsible person. So,
well, absolutely.
We're saying AJ's responsible and you're not. This is a backward world, but
well, that just goes along with everything else that's going on with the Discord server. So, I mean,
so I was thinking the fact that the first question we ask is how many hours when somebody says they're soloing doesn't help, right? Because we're setting up that is the most important thing to ask by saying that. And whether we mean it as a value judgment or not, just by saying it brings in that comparison. I think in some ways, it is natural for us to benchmark, even if it isn't for competition, but just as kind of a status check, knowing, when is it normal for someone to solo, right? Is kind of an expectation. And it may be, oh, well, wow, people solo at 6 hours. I'm at 60. That's good to know. Now, it's obviously that's not the case, or not normally the case, but I think that some of that comparison or benchmarking is normal. It's just that it leads to that hazardous attitude, to making that the important piece that you're focusing on.
I think I just think, well, and I really do. I mean, the adage of, comparison is the thief of joy really is it too, right? It's like, what a miraculous, amazing thing that we're all taking on. It's so personal. It's so unique. I mean, even among the things that we do ourselves, no two landings are the same. No two flights are the same. Nothing is ever the same. And the circumstances are just so special and unique, and to be regarded as that. And I think that, we've got to always remind ourselves to not let anything be the thief of joy in this. Dennis Kern, great comment here. He says, I was discouraged at how long training was taking till I ran into Brian's comparison as the thief of joy video. There's not a standardized test for this in the sense of all conditions and elements of your training. I mean, everything is unique. Your airport, your CFI, your environment, how busy it is, all these things. It's so wildly varied that it's just a completely inane thing. Like, there's a lot of people that say they soloed in 5 hours. It's also kind of like, well, that's probably not good. So it's
exactly. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off, did I?
Oh, no, you did, but I'm okay with it.
No, you touched on something there that I really wanted to address. Everybody. So, for example, you ask somebody how long it took them to solo or to get their PPL. Well, the one thing that we don't ask is the airport you fly in a Delta where you get, 2 laps in the pattern, every hour.
Yeah.
I live in an area where there are thunderstorms every afternoon, at 3 p.m. and that's the only time I can train. So I'm only able to get a lesson every other week. There's so many other factors that you've touched on that people don't ask those questions. And they just assume that, well, you're just a slow learner. And to the other point of the spectrum that you just said, somebody that solos in 6 hours, I'm not sure that I'd want to get in the plane with them right away. I'm not sure that they've been able to experience everything you really should experience before you solo. So I think that's an excellent point, and something that it took me a while to mature and understand that, it doesn't matter. Everybody's situation is different.
I think that my inability to really get started on my instrument rating has really benefited me in some other ways. So everything, of course, in aviation is trade-offs, and it's always a give and take. And so in the case of those who, we sort of have a class of midlifers that Ted, I think you and I are kind of in the same class of midlifers. Ben, you kind of, you went to the same midlife academy, but back then you could still, smoke in the courtyard or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like that's a different.
I'm the kid that the parents held back for a couple of years. So I'm like 2 years older than everybody, but in the same grade.
So, it's real easy to not see those folds also in terms of, the waves of us kind of coming out and getting out into the world of flying. Our areas are unique to different types of experiences. And so, Ted, you've got, an envious amount of, small airstrips, grass strips, remote beach.
Yeah.
You've done all of these things that I have not even, ventured into yet. And I think that you said it best once, and maybe you can speak to this, but I think that you said once, that you prefer to not have energy about these things in a competitive or a jealous or an envious way. And it's more of just a positive support and encouragement and kind of a good for you mentality.
Yeah. I think that that feeling of envy, of looking and saying, man, Ben, I'm so jealous that you're going to fly through bad weather to Panama City. I can't fly on those days, right? It's like, what's the gain? It doesn't do me any good. It doesn't affect Ben at all, but it doesn't do me any good. It's a toxic attitude to have. And so you can just look at people and their experience and enjoy it, be glad for them. And
well, yeah. And in the same way that there's people that fly warbirds, or there's people that fly all these, whatever, turbines. There's turbine. I don't know. Choose
either is acceptable.
Okay.
Soda and pop. It's where you are in the country.
But the idea is that I prefer to think of it as we're all the people that are alive right now that are trying to move forward in aviation. And we have a huge sort of backlog of pedagogy and knowledge to try to take in. And then if there's anything new that we can offer to it, then great. But we're a collective organism in a way. Everybody's out sort of seeking and doing. And then the more we can collectively harness and exchange that information, that's what makes everything so great. I mean, I see Erica's in the chat right now, and Aerosafe Erica. By the way, congrats on your spot on opposing bases. It's really well done. So somebody that's chosen the path of, obviously a person that can do and does do a lot of different things, chose a speciality of weather and is going down that lane to make us better single engine, piston, weather avoiding people in a better spot. And by the way, Ted, I don't get envious of Ben being able to fly through the weather at all. In fact, I cash in on it because Ben just comes and picks me up and takes me to St. Simon.
Oh yeah,
right?
totally.
It's great. I mean,
yeah.
I did want to make a clarification to Erica that we just threw out that number, somebody getting a solo in 5 hours. I don't know of anybody that's done it in that period of time, but there are people to the point that are trying to do their private pilot check ride at 40 hours. So they're rushing through it. And that's really what we're trying to, not compare ourselves to, or to be mindful of. Another person in our chat, Scotty Scott, everyone asks if I've soloed yet. Answer, nope. I'm working on landing the plane without making a groove in the runway. And you know what? It doesn't matter how long it takes. It took me a really long time to get landings down. And you go at your own pace. It's when somebody tells me I soloed, and there's a way to do it that's very braggadocious, and there's some people just say it as matter of factly. But if you're bragging about it, I'm just going to look at you and say, how nice. I mean, that's the only way I know to handle that, and just move on.
Yeah.
So.
Well, the other way I see people doing a lot of comparing is especially when people get their private pilot certificate and they get out there, some people are in a situation where they need to rent. Some people are in a situation where they actually have the freedom to rent a club plane and maybe they can go places. Other people cannot. Some people buy planes. Some people buy into planes. Some people manage to fly 3 hours a month. Some people manage to fly 20 hours a month. It really opens up wildly after the framework of training is done, irrespective of how long or not it took you. And then I see this other thing kind of happening where people are kind of, I don't know, pushing maybe to get, the ratings race, as we've kind of talked about, which is fine. Or getting more airplane than what you need because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, or they're not getting the plane that's really for their mission most of the time. And, there's continuous stream of these accident studies that come out where you see people that were over their heads in an airplane that they probably shouldn't have been in with their families and, all of that. And I feel like that underlying those instincts, because we look at it and go, why would you do that?
Yeah,
right. It's hard when you study these accidents and it's like, I want to walk away with something that I can learn from, but a lot of these decisions that are being made are so egregious on top of egregious on top of egregious that I can't even really relate to it, but, right. But I guess my point is just that, with even, those types of things, I do think that this tendency to compare to ourselves or what we're flying or what we're doing to others plays into, maybe some of the soil that bad decisions get planted in.
Yeah. Our friend Peter Tarantelli put a great comment up. He said, there's always somebody ahead of you and always somebody behind, whether it's in ability, financially, or whatever. We're all different. That's life. And it's a good way to think about it. Somebody's got a much nicer plane than me. Somebody's got a much worse plane or can't afford a plane. And I'm just happy with what I've got, right? There are bigger planes. You just got to be happy with what you've got. And I think I was thinking about that, what you said, Brian, because you'd be happy with less plane. You'd be happy with a 140. And in some ways, that would help you. You could fly more. You had less plane, you're going slower, but you can afford to fly it more. There's less maintenance. I'm not saying you're in the wrong plane, but certainly it's attractive to downgrade. It's not just the one direction.
The only way this thing's going is down.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily a great thing to say about an airplane, but I might use a different analogy there. But I get it. I almost get back in my airplane after I've been in somebody's airplane that's got a prettier panel than mine. I'm like, I'm sorry, honey. I didn't know. I still love you. You're still my favorite airplane. And we talk about high wings and low wings and different things like that. You're going to be in love with the plane that you're flying.
Yep.
Doesn't matter if it's a high wing or a low wing or a turbine or a track or a complex or has a G3000 or whatever it's got in there. Whatever you're flying, it's going to be your favorite plane.
Or it should be at least.
Be at least.
Yeah.
Until the engine dies.
You're alive for that flight.
That's right.
You better love it. Yeah. And then I also, another area that I feel I see some of these things happening that is maybe not beneficial is when it comes to the types of flying and trips that people are taking. And I see people, I don't know if, maybe I'm intuiting it, right? But let's just say we're doing a lot of hyperbole here tonight, 5 hours solo. We're talking in these extremes, but I see people who maybe just got their private pilot certificate and now they're looking to take on very ambitious trips that perhaps they're not ready for. And I think that some of the reasoning behind that is because whether it's, I don't know, sort of a YouTube mind pollution, or I don't know what it is, but people get into this mindset where they're just ready to take on the world, and they're not stepping through it in a sensible way with their minimums and with their flight planning and with their experience level. And I feel like that's another way that people can kind of get themselves in trouble. I mean, at the same time, you do have to get out there, and you shouldn't be sheepish either. So it's a fine line, but I feel like that's another area where people might do things that are out of character or out of proportion for where they are at the time. And that maybe some of what's pushing that is a little bit of that kind of keeping up with the Joneses, or, with your buddy or whatever.
I did a trip with my youngest son, Evan. It was a Pilots and Paws trip. And I had less than 200 hours. So this was a pretty good while back. And I did my weather brief. And I'm saying that not just because Eric Gilbert's in here, but I knew that there was the forecast. It was in the middle of the summer. It was hot as it could be. It was in South Georgia. And there was forecasting scattered to numerous thunderstorms. So they were starting out scattered, and they were going to build to where there would be numerous. And of course, with the Pilots and Paws mission, there was delays. You had to wait till the people came to pick up the dogs. And I knew we were getting time pressed. And we landed, we got the dogs delivered, but they had built up, and there was a straight line that I couldn't get past. So Evan and I turned it into a very fun experience. And we played around this little podunk airport, Cordele, Georgia. It was awesome. Just playing on some of their equipment, their tractors. This tractor was like, the tow tractor was from literally like the 1940s, but still worked great. And we were The storms are just north of us, and we just had a really great time. But we get into plane. We left that morning at 9:30 from my home airport. We get into plane to fly back to McCollum at 11:45 at night. Landed around 1. We have to jump a fence to get out because we didn't know where the exit gate was.
Yeah.
Fairly new to the airport, teaching my son all the great habits, as a pilot. But when I got home, I was like, I've seen on YouTube people doing different types of adventures. I'm like, that's enough for me. I don't think I need to do that anymore. It wasn't as glamorous as it looks like when they show it on YouTube.
I think that there's kind of a homogenization of adventure that Instagram and YouTube creates. If we all are following the same people, we get the idea that there's one place that's the pinnacle, the holy grail that we want to go visit. And then we do it and we perpetuate that by sharing the picture from there. And you end up having that same experience that everyone else does. And for me, some of that is that's why I like to do the airport passport program, is go find new airports and go find new adventures, and not just go to Catalina Island because everybody else goes to Catalina Island, right? But go visit a really small airport and spend the night. Not one that's known for being somewhere that you spend the night, or somewhere that you fly in and you explore once you get there. And to me, that's a lot of the adventure is that discovery. So it's not just there's a known thing and I'm checking off the box that I've been there and I've seen that, just like everybody else who's following the same people and gone and done that.
Yeah. Speaking my language, I mean, for me, if I could quit my whole life and just do aviation things, all I would do is just travel around to small, insignificant places that no one else cares about, and uncover anything that I can and document it and enjoy it and create things around it. I mean, that's my favorite thing, way beyond going to these, destination kind of places. I would rather be in some, I love it when people are just like, you went where?
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Of course.
I got to ask.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I got to ask the.
No.
I will go.
All right.
I apologize once again. I got asked the other day, what was my very favorite airport stop when I'm traveling? And I've said this a couple of times, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. They had one of the best diners, one of the coolest diners that I've ever seen. It was literally built in the 50s, and it's not meant to look like it was built in the 50s. It's just never been updated. And the people were awesome. To your point, it's all these small, unknown places that are waiting to be discovered. That's, to me, the fun part. We stopped in Tailfair, Wheeler County, McRae, Georgia, and it was a phone booth of a FBO. It was probably 4 by 8 foot, 32 square foot building that had a phone in there so you can call the shuttle service to come pick you up.
Yeah.
That was it. Which is, I've learned if I need anything not to go to that airport, there are no services whatsoever. So, it's just, that's the best part to me.
Yeah. I think we have to be a little bit vulnerable. We need to be vulnerable and put ourselves in those positions of, okay, well, I'm at an airport and I need to find somewhere to eat, instead of planning so far in advance that you go to the one place has a restaurant on the field. Give yourself that opportunity to take some risk, not in the safety way of risk, but in the things may go slightly different way. I might be hungry or things like that.
Yeah. Make some room for serendipitous things to happen. It'll mean that much more in retrospect, as opposed to going to a known good place that has a known good outcome. And yes, I ate at that restaurant, and yes, I had the oysters, or, there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know. I do think that there's just I constantly, I'll just say this. I'm not the most overtly patriotic person, right? I appreciate everything, but I'm not like, whatever. All that being said, nothing makes me more patriotic and happy to be in this country than to enjoy aviation as it is and to see all of the places that we can do whatever they, just the massive infrastructure of the 40s and 50s and 60s, the build out that was happening then that we're still benefiting from now. It's just unbelievable. So anyway, I don't know how we got over here on this, but it really is a gift. And so, I guess maybe the point is just, it's all good. There's no, your path, the places you go, none of this stuff matters. Just enjoy the trip and the learning and get better at it and don't, get caught up in, when you're at the ramp and somebody pulls up with the same exact model plane you have, but theirs is, all tricked out and theirs has $80,000 worth of upgrades that you cannot afford. Nobody cares, right, Ben?
Yeah.
No. It's nice to be able to strive for things. And yes, I would love to update, but for 6 years now, our plane has treated us very well. We've never gotten lost. We've never bent the plane, knock on wood. Everything is working great. So, be thankful for what you have.
Yeah. And also, the paintwork you had done looks really good.
Yeah.
And,
it actually shows nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that, if you ever have to, I think that interior will last your lifetime. Don't you think? I hope it does.
So we actually talked about that. The pilot seat has a little rip in it. So there's going to be some minor repairs done to it. So, and we talk about our plane. There are some buttons starting to fail, non-essential buttons, but buttons on the GPS. It's a 430 WAS.
Oh,
and Garmin's not supporting those anymore. So, we maybe have our hand forced to do something here soon. But, again, we'll milk it for all we can. And yes, that interior will probably stay in perpetuity.
It should end up in the Smithsonian is all I'm saying. But so now what is the best path for, I haven't even thought about, we have a 530 WAS in Lucy and, all I'm focused on right now is just do not, I'm just babying it, just very gentle button pushes. Don't break anything. Don't look at it too long. Make sure
be gentle with the display. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, what is going to be the reasonable path? Like if you have a 430 WAS like you have, and you got to go somewhere else with it and you don't have, crazy funds. Like what do you do?
I don't have crazy funds. One dull geek thinks that a Garmin 650 XI is coming, but I don't even know what that is. I do like the 375, but if we could find a 650 used, find something remanufactured, we'll again. I'd like to get a couple of G5s thrown in there as well. But again, everything is working, and this doesn't sound very forward thinking, but if it's not broke, don't fix it. And when it breaks, then fix it. So,
right. It's still working.
It's still working. So we're just going to keep pushing it along.
The May 2024 episode of The Aviation Consumer, which I always want to call Aviation Consumer News, but The Aviation Consumer, has a full section on the Garmin 430 and what to do because they are still repairable, but also what the replacements are. So I'll try to put a link to that in the show notes. But there are some options, including, I believe, the Avidyne 540 that Erica mentioned, the ID 540, is almost a slide-in replacement. So that's an option too.
Yep. We'll be doing if I do the heavy research now, I'll forget about it until the time is, and then I won't know where to find it. So I'm taking the lazy way out.
Yeah. Things will change.
And I am not opposed to going to an Avidyne system or any other system for that matter. I am not bleeding Garmin blue. So,
one other fun thing that's been happening on our side with our plane is we kind of got an option to move the airplane to a closer airport to us, but the state in which the plane is based now does not have use tax. And so we would have to pay that. So even if it's cheaper and closer, the amount of money that we would have to pay in taxes to import it, it's crazy how that all works. Just because you live just on a piece of dirt that's just like right here, it's like, that's going to be another $9,000 to, I don't know, to park a thing over here. It's crazy.
Here comes the other shoe from a whole patriotic comment about how things are great here. Now we know how you really feel. So
depends on where you are inside this wonderful country. I really do appreciate, by the way, not to just push our Patreon and Discord, but that's one of my favorite things about it is a politics-free zone. There is all kinds and all makes and all models and all manner of people and coming from different perspectives. And there's none of that. Ben, you've said before, like it's actually cut down on your social media consumption of any other kind because it's just sort of happening unto itself. I agree. And it's just nice to sort of be in a place where people can have differences, but it doesn't even matter, or it's not even really apparent. It's so good. So I really appreciate everything about the community. And so I'm certainly not trying to introduce any kind of, I'm not trying to open the door.
No. I didn't think though, but you bring up an exact right point. And I think anybody in the world will tell you that flying in the U.S. is the best general aviation place in the world. You've got so many freedoms. You've got so many airports. It's nobody's going to debate that. Yeah. And to your point with the Discord, for those of you out there, if I can learn to be on Discord, then anybody can. But it is a very safe space. It's a great community. I don't know what else to say about it. So,
have I talked a lot about Tailwheel yet, or how are the drinking game people doing?
Well, we haven't mentioned the other one. It's got to be near Panama City, Florida.
Yeah, I'm very conscious of that word. However, I will be flying down there in 2 weeks. So, and having some oysters, as previously mentioned by Mr. Siskin.
But where's that? What is it called?
Appalach, baby. Apalachicola.
Apalachicola. It's like a Coca-Cola with a bit of swamp.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm going to take you guys down there and you're going to get it. You're going to like, okay, I see. Oh, yeah. I get it. That's how it's going to be. I'm just telling you right now.
All right.
That is my little slice of heaven.
What are all the animals you're killing down there? Just anything that moves, or just fish, or what?
Only fish, inshore fish, redfish, speckled trout, sheephead, drum. That's it. No other animals are harmed in the making of that adventure.
Do you know that one time, Ben, I used to fish a lot when I was a kid. We had a lake right by my house, and so I would walk over there and I went bass fishing almost every day as a kid just to have something to do. And when I was about 12, we went to go see some family in the Northeast, and I think we were at Cape Cod or somewhere up there. And so they were very excited to take us out deep sea fishing. To me, this was like, we're going to the moon. I can't believe this is happening. Yeah. And so I was so excited. And we go out, and I can't even believe I'm on this type of boat, and all the smells and the sounds and the people, and they're going way out into the ocean. I just, I felt like I was in like an adventure novel or something. And we get out there, and we finally, are allowed to drop the lines and everything, and we start fishing. And, I'm not catching anything. People are pulling up a little bit of sea bass and just whatever, this and that and the other. And then out of nowhere, I've got fish on, man. I mean, I'm talking, I feel like the rod is going to snap. Okay. This is the greatest moment of my life. This is everything I've ever dreamed of. And I'm pulling on this thing. The guys that work the boat, like come over and they're, helping me and everything. A small crowd assembles around me. Can't wait to see what this is. I am almost scared, right? Is this a shark or I don't know. This is something crazy. And we pull on this thing, and then we finally get, and they've got the hooks out, they're ready to,
the gaffs. Yeah.
Yeah. I caught about 25 feet of rope with a bucket on the end of it. And by the way, somewhere in my family home, there's a Polaroid of me standing there,
the bucket,
holding the bucket.
Nice.
So,
it's provided me, my family, with a lot of some amazing and some very weird and scary experiences. We got a little bit of time, but we fish out of this fishing lodge, and it's inshore. So you're in the bay. The deepest water is 12, 20 feet, somewhere right that. And we fish in the rivers as well. But we're in the bay, and my cousin, or actually my nephew, was talking to my dad. We're going from one point to the next. And he said, "Look at that dead bird over there." And my nephew said, "Looked like a dead body." And the guide heard that, and he threw the boat to the throttle to the stops. He said, "We've been missing a shrimper for a week and a half."
Oh,
yeah. And we went and turned around, and sure enough, it was him.
What?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we had to call the shore patrol, and they had to come. We had to stay there. Yeah, it was pretty weird. So yeah, that's one of those 1%ers that you never want to be, where you discover a dead body.
Well, I don't want to compare.
That breaks the show down, I know, but
I don't want to compare my story to yours, Ben, but I think that yours wins out in terms of the rarefied nature of it. But that is awful.
It was awful, but it's those life experiences that always seems to happen on a boat. So anyway, that's went down that road. We can edit that out, maybe. We'll see.
No,
but
let's just look. I think we've abandoned scruples a while back.
I think you're right.
I mean, the fact that we even have a topic is pretty miraculous unto itself.
Yeah.
The fact that we started this show topic of comparison is the thief of joy and ended it on a dead body. That's very midlife of us, I would say.
But see, the thing, Ben, is, that Brian has the bucket mounted on a board above his fireplace. So,
he's got that over me. And I'd rather have that experience than the one I just described. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah. Hey, it made me think. I was out flying the other day, and I heard a plane declare an emergency to come into land, and it was a trainer twin, and they had I think they'd seen smoke off the engine, oil smoke off the engine, and it was just kind of a weird thing to sit there and look at ADSB and try and figure out where they were versus me, and then to listen and make sure they came in okay. So that was a random experience of the week. So.
I still haven't heard an emergency call on the frequency yet.
Yeah.
I'm kind of on, point to listen out for it, but
I know what you almost said there.
On guard?
Yes.
Yes. And I am on guard, but
yes.
You're on guard.
That's right.
Well, I'll double change the topic there. Peter said, he asked if I've got a fish story. I did the charter Alaska fishing thing with my dad and my brother, and I was the only one that caught a salmon on that trip. And I'm used to catching trout and little fish, and catching a 35-pound salmon that is really angry. That was a lot of work. So, but I got to ride in float planes, and I got to sit in the front of the de Havilland Beaver.
Nice.
As it took us around. Those were good times. So fishing and aviation all goes together, I think.
It absolutely does.
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, anything else for the good of the order?
No.
I think we're good. I'm just amazed that we all three got in the same place, same time to do this. I appreciate you guys being patient with me as I threw together a secondary studio 5 minutes before we started. So thanks for your working with me on that, and everybody for being in the chat.
Do want to thank all of our Patreon members and the folks in the live chat. Thank you very much for joining. Next week, we're going to talk about when flying gets boring. Things to do when you just want to go flying, but don't want to do boring maneuvers or going across country somewhere. Just different flying ideas.
Yeah. And if you have any ideas about that topic, email any feedback or suggestions, thoughts, ruminations, concerns, complaints, or accolades to midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com, or just go to our website, midlifepilotpodcast.com. We'd really like to reflect more on written things that we receive from people. We do like talking to people in the chat. We don't like listening to ourselves talk about ourselves. But if you guys are cool with it, that's fine. But no, it's an interesting midlife space to be in. You got to keep your skills up. You can't always go on a big trip. You don't always want to do procedural type of flying or training type of flying. So when and everything can't be $100 hamburger. So what is that in between stuff? So if you've got suggestions about things you do to keep flying from, flying being boring is not possible. I don't understand, but we're dealing in hyperbole now. We are in a sensationalized world. So, anyway, please send in anything that you have, thoughts, examples about, ways, flights that you take or ways that you go about that. We'd love to feature them and elaborate and talk about them. And Ben, you always have something to do, which is find clouds.
Some days are easier than others. I do want to, just to follow up with your comment, would love to hear from the people that listen to this on the audio only version of the podcast. Would love to hear from you via email. Ted will have links in the show notes on how to get a hold of us, but just take 5 minutes and shoot us an email. Or you can even leave a voice recording on our website at midlifepilotpodcast.com. So
we'll put Ted's address in the show notes. Just go by.
You can show up to Ted's house and they'll just interview you.
Yeah, bring a sandwich or whatever. He'll let you in.
Exactly.
There you go. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, gents. Closing out episode 75 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good night, everybody.